Dear Richard Eden over at the Daily Fail, Meghan, or Princess, I should say, Princess Henry of Wales, aka the Duchess of Sussex, aka Meghan, is not Wallis Simpson, is nothing like Wallis Simpson, and you can just stop right now comparing Meghan to Wallis Simpson. I will admit that there are some parallels, if you will. These two women are both American. Wallis was an American citizen. Meghan is an American citizen. And they both married into the royal family, right? They were both divorcees when they married into the royal family. And they were both detested by a certain cross section of people in England as a consequence. And in fact, because of his love for Wallis Simpson, Edward had to abdicate the throne and leave England, right? Harry did not abdicate a throne because Harry was never the heir apparent. He is in the line of succession, but he's not the heir apparent, right? And under normal circumstances, he's never going to be king. I mean, I have my own doubts about that, but under normal circumstances, he's not going to be king, right? So sorry about that. But Harry is, not going to be king, I mean, even though he's in the line of succession, as I said. And so to compare Harry, first of all, to Edward is not a fair comparison because even though Harry offered to give up his royal title and to give up his HRH styling, he didn't, he did not abdicate, and he was allowed to keep his title as well. Edward too kept his title even though he abdicated the throne. But as far as Meghan and Wallis Simpson are concerned, Richard, um, these are very different women, honestly. Wallis Simpson, God bless her heart, was no match for you guys. For your contemporaries of the day, your fellow journalists, your fellow haters, she was no match for them in the sense that, she kept her cool like Meghan did. Okay, so that's another comparison, is that both these women kept their cool and they never really had meltdowns to satisfy y'all, right? So that's another similarity. But Wallis was not really equipped to beat you guys at your own game. She wasn't equipped for it because she didn't, well, first of all, she didn't have social media. She didn't have a background in Hollywood. I believe she knew a lot of influential people in her time, obviously. But, Meghan, you have to give Meghan some credit here. I mean, in her place, a lot of other women, even today, even with social media, even with, ties to very powerful people, might have crumbled up like a broken in umbrella and just caved, because this is a tremendous amount of pressure to live under constantly. Wallis didn't have that kind of pressure. I mean, she escaped to Bermuda, a whole different country. She lived there for some time with her husband, who was the governor, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, of Bermuda. And then they moved to France and lived somewhere in the outskirts of Paris. By the way, there was supposed to be a museum of made of their home that was supposed to be open to the public, I think, like 2 years ago. And I've been trying to visit this museum, but I haven't heard anything about it. If you guys know anything about it, do let me know. But so Wallis, you know, God bless her soul. I mean, she kept her cool and she lived in obscurity, right? And she was hated to the end. And I understand why it's tempting to say, well, there's similarities between her and Meghan because I've just outlined several of those similarities. American divorcee, detested because of who they married, and so on. But we have to give Meghan credit here where it's due. Meghan is a brilliant chess player, right? She plays chess. She's not playing checkers, right? Wallis, I didn't know that she was playing anything at all. She was just taking her, lashings, and she just went and she climbed onto her rock. Meghan knows what you guys are up to. She knew it from day one. Okay. She said once in one of her public appearances while she was still in the UK, this does not track. This does not track. I always remember when she said that because now that we know what was going on behind the scenes, I know exactly what she was getting at. She was dropping breadcrumbs and hints about how she felt about what was happening. She wasn't having it, right? She wasn't having it, but she was going to play this in a way that would allow her and her husband to win this, right? That takes brain power. Standing up to all of y'all in this way for so long, that takes a woman with great strength and a huge brain, right? She knows exactly what she's doing. She is playing chess. She associates herself with the type of people who can help her and her husband to maneuver themselves in such a way that you guys you can't keep up. You're tripping over yourselves trying to keep up with Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, Princess Henry of I want to start calling her Princess Henry of Wales because it just sounds so nice. Princess Henry of Wales. Mm. Ah. Just having some tea. Anyway, yeah. So Meghan is not a Wallis Simpson. I mean, that is not to say that Wallis Simpson was not a very intelligent woman. I think for any woman to be able to, um, you know, marry someone on that level, she can't just be innocent and sweet and clueless. She has to be intelligent as well. She has to know what's going on and she has to know who she's dealing with. And so I'm sure Wallace did in her own way. But I think Meghan is in a whole other league. She's on a whole other level, right? She knew how to play this game. This was a treacherous game from the start. Y'all started with her from as soon as she started dating Harry, comparing her to a monkey. Remember in the beginning how Harry had to come out with a letter, like a public, from on the Kensington Palace letterhead with you guys and what you were doing with his girlfriend. And, the Princess Henry of Wales, I mean, she saw what was up from the start. I mean, and she still hung in there. She got her husband, she got her man. She got her man and they got married but she knew that she wasn't going to be stuck, right? You were not going to define her. You were not going to drive her into the moving traffic. You are not going to take her marriage and her relationship either. She won. And so listen, don't compare her to Wallace because Meghan's husband never had to go back to beg the royals for money, right? They won. They make their own money and so much of it, right? So much of it that it made all your heads spin. Meghan is not Wallis Simpson, okay? Meghan is Meghan, Princess Henry of Wales, the Duchess of Sussex. one of a kind. There's nobody like her, and I don't think we'll ever see another for generations.